looks like this go live anyways. Oh, I have to remove Facebook. So changes. Okay, hello. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty this morning, but we are live. We are here, George. Good morning. It's Thursday.
Good morning.
We're almost done with the week.
Great. That's great. Let's keep it moving,
Let's keep it moving. I'm excited. I'm excited to have you here. So I'm with George Khaldun today. George and I are going to talk about the 5 most important traits of a leader. So George is an expert in leadership and getting the ball to actually move forward. That's what I love about you, George. Like, you actually help teams take a vision and then make the vision happen. And so I'm excited to chat with you about what you think the 5 most important traits of a leader are. Sound good? You ready to go?
It sounds wonderful. Yeah, there are a number of traits. My name is George Khaldun. I just want to let you know I have a BA from Bowdoin College and a master's from Columbia Teachers College, and I've studied at the London School of Economics, also Columbia Business School. And I've been a professional for over 25 years, starting with a nonprofit. We had about $15 million when I left. We had about $120 million in operating expenses. And so it's a pleasure to be here to share some of my thoughts around leadership currently. So we with profit and nonprofit companies, because essentially the problem is the same: organization, management, strategy. All those issues are the same for profit and nonprofit. Mm-hmm. However, the difference is that for profit, obviously, you're making a lot of money. But again, if you can't manage the staff, you have high turnover, that leads to low profitability. So my people that I talk to are business people and for nonprofit leaders. I talk to both groups. So awesome. Today, I just wanted to share a couple of things that I've been dealing with recently, and there are like 5 traits that leaders should have. And actually, it's 6, right?
But so 6. First, you put a bonus one on us. You're giving me a bonus round today.
I just threw another one on there.
You just all right. Well, then let's start with number 1.
Number 1: leaders must be willing to learn every day. I'm going to explore that in more depth as we go on, but learning is extremely important. And one of the things that I find that is so fascinating, and the Harvard Business Review came out about 3 years ago, it said that American companies spend about $160 billion a year in training, and also that internationally over $360 billion in training. However, there's little to show for it. And what's fascinating is, why is this? And what some of the traits that I'm going to talk about is because they're missing in some companies and with some leaders. Leaders must be willing to learn every day. You can't go into the office that you know it all and no one can do you anything, or you listen to a small cadre of people. You must be willing to learn. Just because you graduated from Harvard Business School and you're rich by this point, if you're a CEO of a major corporation, that you don't have to listen to people. So we have to put our egos aside and try to learn from the staff and learn from new technologies that are developing, etc. And you must choose purpose. The second one: purpose over money. Money will come, but if you're not driven with a purpose, to improve the quality of life for this company, to improve the overall status of this company, to improve the conditions that people exist in, then it becomes just a money thing. And after you get the money, then there's no drive. Purpose drives you. So that's important.
Yeah. And purpose for what you're helping your customers with too, or people who benefit from your organization or your products or whatever. Like, that's got to be a purpose, and then money comes after that. I'm glad that you said that.
Absolutely. Another thing, you must see through the eyes of your clients and your employees. You have to see through their eyes. You have to understand their concept and where they're coming from and what are
Mhm.
their basic needs. By understanding the concepts and the ideas that your clients want or your customers want, then you can better serve them. And also your employees. You have to understand who
Mm.
they are, what motivates them. And by you're able to understand what motivates them, it'll give you the stronger, give you the ability, excuse me, to motivate them and to improve your outcomes for your firm. And one of the big things that that leaders must learn is how to. Oftentimes there are failures, there's close to failures, but and you have to take criticism. You have to stand up and say, "Oh, that was my fault. I did that
Mm.
wrong." Right? You have to learn how to take the heat. If you're
Mhm.
criticized by the board, etc., you can't go in the corner and pout about how no one loves me. Take the heat. You made a mistake. Move on. And that's what real leaders are able to do and should be doing. And also another important thing is you have to be a coach. You have to coach your people. Your
Mm.
subordinates right under to be someone they turn to for information and in terms of how to lead and improve in terms of them helping you to improve your bottom line. So those are some of the things that leaders should do. But today,
Mhm.
however, I just want to focus on number one.
Okay.
Leaders must be willing to learn every day. And I think that is critical in terms of uh, the conditions of your client, of your environment, of your product, of your staff. You must be willing to learn. You can't say, "Well, I've been here 10 years or 15 years, and I know everything, and no one could tell me anything." And that arrogance has driven a lot of multi-million dollar companies into the hole because they thought they knew it all and didn't
Mm.
explore. They explore new technologies. And by that, you can name them that major firms have gone out of business because they felt that or the boss or their corporation felt they knew it all. A
Mhm.
perfect example is Kodak. Kodak thought they knew it all and they invest in new technologies. And so therefore, eventually they went out of business. So
Mhm.
I said a lot. But so what I want to do today is focus on, I'm looking at Ford Motor Company back in the 80s and
Mhm.
90s, because I
Okay.
think that's a perfect example of a company that was going out of business. Actually, they were losing business in the 90s and in
Mhm.
the late 80s. And so they brought in a new boss. His name's Alan Mullery. And he's went into the business knowing that he wanted to learn. He was a learner. Uh, before he went to Ford, he was the chief operating officer of Boeing. And at Boeing, every day he would bring in engineers and sit down and talk to them to learn more about the engineering problems. He would bring in the economists who worked for the company to talk about the market conditions. He was a learner. He would bring in his PR people to find out what was happening in the world, what the people think about Ford. So he was a
Mhm.
learner. He was always bringing in staff. No, I mean, not only people who were on executive level, he would go down to the floor and talk to foremen. He would talk
Mm.
to employees to find out how were they doing their jobs and how could Boeing make them better. So he was a learning boss, one who
Mhm.
was inquisitive. His ego didn't get in the way because he's the boss. He would talk to everyone in order to understand what was happening with his company. So when he went to Ford, he took those same concepts with him. How do I learn? What's going on at Ford? And there was a number of issues that Ford was having at that time. He learned number one, he learned that Ford was disorganized. Uh,
Mm.
the whole question of how to get things done was muddled.
Mhm.
Um, the leadership were in disarray. They would argue with one another. Their finances weren't in good shape because there was poor or no communication. And so there was a real serious problem. And so a number of things he had to do was sit down and try to figure out exactly how to attack and how to deal with these issues that they were confronting.
And let's just pause on that for a second, because a lot of really large major companies are highly disorganized. And I think it's a perception that, oh, well, this is a big company. They must have all of their stuff together. They must be really organized. But you're even just through this example saying no, like a lot of times that's not the case. And you have to have a leader who can take a pause and take a step back and say, we're disorganized. Why are we disorganized? Why is this happening? And why am I needing to lead in? So I just wanted to like highlight that, because I think it's important and a lot of people just overlook that.
Absolutely. And so he went department by department, being a new guy. And the people at Ford didn't want him because he came from the airline business. And so he said, look, when I build the airplanes, there are 100 million parts. And in Ford, there's less than 1 million. So I can do this. And so he was real clear about, the reason why he was there. And there was a lot of issues with them. There was administration was disorganized. The different units were disorganized. The management didn't get along with each other. There was the culture. There wasn't a culture of collaboration, and that's critical in any company. You have to have a culture of communication and collaboration, because if you're in department A and you're doing X, and you're putting in the engines and you don't talk about department B, there's a problem there. Communication is essentially important, and they didn't have that, and they didn't have a collaborative culture, meaning that people wanted to get along with each other regardless of what department you worked in. Having a collaborative culture is important, because that means that regardless of what department you work in, if you need some help in another department, you'll do that, or you'll communicate with people. So that's important, to have a collaborative culture. And also, there was a whole question of budgets. There were major budget overruns, and no one was in charge to really look at that and say, look, we have to do X, Y, and Z. But since there wasn't a collaborative culture, it's really a hand. So the issue of being collaborative and understanding culture is extremely important. And so one of the things I did, one of the theories I use in my practice is looking at the whole transformation process within a company. What happens internally? What is the transformational process that happens within companies? What's the organizational structures? And so one of the key things when you that Alan looked at Ford was, he looked at the people. Who do I have working for me? What are their backgrounds? What is their history? What are their aspirations? So when he looked at his staff and the people around him, he felt that changes had to be made in some cases. Because in order to have a successful company, you have to understand the aspirations and the inspiration of your staff, what drives them in order to get the best out of them. What does this person want to do? Are they just at this job because they couldn't find anything else? Or they really want to be a ballerina, but that didn't work out. So now, they're in accounting,
To be a ballerina.
So you gotta know your people.
Yeah, you do.
And because people help you to achieve your objectives and goals. If their heart is not in it, they really want to be someplace else, and they're just there for a check, which is fine, right? We all have to do some sacrifices in life. But when you're running a major corporation, you have major staff executives reporting to you, and they rather be someplace else. You have to know that, because that can hinder their overall performance in the long run.
Well,
So
it's about inspiring people, and even if you have
yes,
complacent people, finding out why are they complacent, and how can you
absolutely.
inspire them to go beyond complacent?
Absolutely. And so that those are some critical concepts.
Hmm.
They're very fundamental here. We're not, Taylor, this is not high science. This is
Yeah.
very low fruit, picking
I
fruit.
didn't go to
But,
Harvard. I get it. No. You know.
but people, they overlook into the stratosphere, and they're looking at other things as opposed to looking at which actually around and
Hmm.
bolts of a company. So it's important. So he looked at staff, which is very important. He analyzed the staff, and he said, "Look, I don't know. Department A wasn't talking to Department B. Department B wasn't talking to Department Z. Department Z wasn't talking to Department L." And so
Hmm.
one of the things he did was very important. He had weekly meetings where each department had to come together and sit down and talk about what was happening in their department and what we needed. Prior to that, everyone worked in their own silos, and never came together to talk about the issue. What were their issues within their departments? Therefore, the engineering department wasn't talking to the people who made the brakes department, and the people who were in
Hmm.
sales wasn't talking to the people who was in design. So therefore, you had confusion. That so by bringing them all together and having consistent meetings where they shared ideas and concepts around problems and issues and concerns, the company began to gel and come together.
Hmm.
The salespeople began to talk to the engineers, for example, and they would say to the engineers, "My customers want X
Hmm.
or Y," and so they were able to communicate and develop develop cars that people wanted, and so that was extremely important. So
Can
the
we I'm
so
curious. I'm curious, George. Can we get to real quick? Can we dig into this a little bit more?
go
The
ahead.
silos. Why do the silos exist in the first place?
Yes.
Because some leaders like him go and say we're all getting together. Some don't. And I'm curious on your take on why the silos exist. I have my own theories about like ego, and maybe people because of ego don't want to share, or they're scared, or they're nervous about their ego getting bruised. But why do you think, like, how do you even get it at the core of like why the silos exist in the first place? And how do you get people to embrace the notion of breaking down the silos?
One of the issues, one of the problems, it stems from leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're working, for example, for the car,
Oh, George, you're
or
breaking
you
up a
or
little
you
bit.
work in finance, um, and you're working in design of the engine, the engineers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody works in a different department, or you work in the national or sales.
Hey, George, we're getting some video cutting up a bit more.
Just happen. Uh, you,
I don't know if it's just on my
right?
end. You there? Now you're back.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Yeah,
We're
we're
good.
good. Okay. It was the video's cutting up a little bit on my end, and I don't know if that's happening just on my end or not, but you're back now.
Yeah. So I'm saying that people get used to working in their particular silo.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody brings them together. They feel that their particular thing is best, and that's the only thing that I mean, their department.
Mm-hmm.
I can worry about my department. I don't have to worry about the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
Worry about sales. I just have to put together a doggone car whether the people in the field want it or not. Or
Yeah.
my department, I'm in accounting, I'm a big time accountant. I have nothing to do with those guys who work on the floor. I have nothing to do with those engineers. My thing is making sure that we get $1 billion in here, and that I hold people accountable for that $1 billion, so that they have developed tunnel vision as opposed to having a vision for the whole company. Vision is and this is where leadership come in. Leaders are supposed to develop the vision and execute on the vision and the strategy and the plans for the company. And what happens often is that there's a big strategic plan, but the different departments aren't talking to each other. And this is where a real leader is able to bring the different factions within the company together. And by not doing that, that creates problems. And this is where you develop the silos, and everyone's vying for power. And all the department heads, my department is better than your department, and we're producing and you're not producing. So it's the leader's fault when these silos developed, and because he or she does not bring the team together on a regular basis to discuss what's happening in your particular department and how what's happening in your department impacts on my department. And so therefore you have these silos, and you have competition between directors. I mean, there's nothing wrong with competition, but when it becomes when you don't share information with other departments, then it becomes detrimental to the head of the company and to the company itself. So it's extremely important that when you come up with a new strategy, not only do the executive team understand the strategy, but the people in the middle managers have to understand the strategy and buy in. And the people below them have to understand the strategy and buy in. So it's a leader's job to bring together all the components and have them share information with each other so they can understand the objectives of the firm.
Mic drop. No. All right, so I know we dug into the silos a little bit, but I wanted to take a step back on that because I think that that's the root of a lot of issues. And so I appreciate you just digging into your thoughts on why that happens and how the leader's accountable to shutting that down, right? Like you said,
Absolutely.
Take the heat, fix it, move on.
That's right. That's right. And I just want to emphasize what you just said. Taking the heat is the big deal. We have to, as leaders, when things go wrong, we have to be able to step up and say, hey, I made the mistake. I gave the wrong strategy, or I didn't tell all the departments about what we are getting ready to do, or I didn't give the team the support that they needed, as opposed to stepping back and let other people take the heat. The leader has to be strong enough emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually in some cases to step forward and say, look, I made the mistake, but this is what we're going to do about it. That's a true leader.
Yeah, totally. All right, so what else? Anything else that you learned from Ford? Okay, give us the rest of the story. How he went in there, he shut down the silos. How did he turn it around?
One of the
final notes on that.
One of the things that he was really good at, as you just mentioned, was bringing all the department heads together.
Yeah.
And when they would meet once a month, everyone would have to report on what they did and what their problems were. And they were able to solve problems together. And so by solving problems together, they were able to, number one, produce a car that worked, that people would like. Advertising and the engineers would get together and just work out problems, and salespeople would get together. Everyone would get together in order to develop a great product. And that's what they were able to do by having these meetings. And at these meetings also, it just wasn't patting each other on the back. It was strong criticism. You did this wrong, or you could do this better, and sharing it didn't work well. the real team, that they were a real team. The thing is so brilliant to bank by him bringing people
I think we're.
invest stock
Hey George, I'm
went
getting
up.
some blipping. I'm getting some blipping in the video again and again. I don't know if it's just on my end, but it's cutting in and out a lot.
So it's able to bring the work. That was the important, and turns people to people to buy into the overall concept of doing your best. So he was able to the whole beginning to work and got the organization on the right.
George, I don't know if you heard me, but we were getting some technical difficulties again, and that was pretty blipped out on my end. I don't know. I hope other people heard it, but we might need to do a retake on it because now you're frozen. Sorry, folks. This is the fun of live streaming sometimes, is sometimes things come through and sometimes things don't. And you got to learn to take the heat and roll with the punches.
That's what they say. Let's roll with
That's
it.
Roll with
That's
it.
real
Roll
leadership.
with it.
Hey, look,
I think I need to have a song ready to go that I just play whenever there's like either on my my end a bandwidth issue or the guest end a bandwidth issue.
As you have not middle 3 be able to go.
Yeah, you do have to roll with it.
And that, and
sorry, George, I'm getting about every like microsecond of what you're saying. Just bloop, bloop. Oh. So, okay. Well, now you're kind of back. Now you're back. It was real choppy for me for a while. But can you see me okay now?
Yeah, I see you great.
Okay. So I think there's some of this that I think I would like to dig into more. We might do a retake to share some of it because we were having technical issues today. But let's do this because it is having a lot of choppiness. So why don't you leave me with your top. You're back now, so I'm gonna get your top takeaway while you're back, and then how people can get in touch with you, and we'll figure out our technical things, and we'll get you back on the line another time.
Oh, great. Well, the key thing is to for a leader is to be able to, number one, comprehend the strategic plan thoroughly, share that strategic plan not only with top management, but middle management, and even those below them. Because if the team or the company doesn't understand strategic plan and the issues that are involved, then that strategic plan fails. So it's important for the leader not only to be a learner, but also to be a person who is able to bring the teams together, understand what the issues are, and execute on the plans. Oftentimes, leaders do not execute on the plans fully. This is why 90%, according to the Harvard Business Review, of all strategic plans fail. And it's because of the communication of the leader's inability to bring together the team, and the leader's inability to learn the company thoroughly.
90%, man, that's big. I'm putting this in the chat so people have that stat. Harvard Business Review. All right. Well, hey, George, this has been. Go ahead.
And I just want to add what I mentioned earlier, and that's after spending, according to the Harvard Business Review, $168 billion for training, and in America, internationally, it's $380-something billion. And most of those strategic plans fail because of the leader's inability to communicate clearly and get his team on board around it.
The communication, whether good or bad, is like a make or break. Honestly, that's been coming up a lot in conversations I've been having with people, with other leaders, other
Yes,
people who lead
yes,
companies. And when the communication breaks down, we all experience this. We all have, we all do. But when you have good communication, it's amazing what you can do. When you have poor
that's
communication,
right.
it's amazing how quickly things can feel like they fall off the rails.
And that is the fault of the president or CEO. It's,
Absolutely. All right. Well, George, how can people get in touch with you, follow along? They should probably go follow you on LinkedIn, but what's the best way to reach you and find you online?
okay. You could reach me at G Khaldun at Urban Leadership Consultants .biz, biz, or you could reach me at my email ekhaldun at gmail.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, George, we're gonna do a second round. We're gonna get into more of the traits on another day. We're gonna figure out our technical
Absolutely.
stuff.
Okay.
Thank you for
Okay.
joining.
Thank you.
Thanks for
It's
tuning
been
in.
great. It's been a pleasure, and I hope
Yeah.
we all got something out of this. And thanks again.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Absolutely. My favorite quote, take the heat and move on, right?
That's
I think
right.
that's the biggest thing. Drop the ego, take the heat, own
Take the
it,
heat.
and get people talking to each other. All right.
Right. That's right.
All right. Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. Have a great
Okay.
rest of the week.
Okay. Bye.